We'll be opening up the 2014 Kewaskum School District Annual Meeting at this time. We'd like to have a moment of silence, please. This time, I'll do the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If anyone has not signed up, the sheets for your township are over on the table at the entrance. At this time, I'd like to introduce the board members present. Mary Miller, Jim Leisler, Heather Elhafen, Sue Miller, and Craig Stafford. Thank you. At this time, we move into the selection of a chairperson. So we're looking for nominations. Yes.
Nominate Troy Hanson.
Do you have any other nominations? Yes, Max.
I move to close nominations.
Okay. Looking for a second? Second. Hey, give me your name, please. Dean Monroe.
Close the nominations.
Roll. Okay, moving on to the agenda, looking for corrections and or deletions to the agenda. Oh, sorry. Looking to take a vote for chairperson of the meeting. Troy Hanson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. On to the agenda for corrections and deletions. Grace Miller.
Let's see, resolution 4, authorization for the school board to purchase vehicles or finance contracts for transportation vehicles. It's stated as 120.10, I think it should be 120.1007.
I believe if I heard Grace right, she said the code section referenced in item C4 shouldn't be 120.10, it should be 120.07. Is that correct, Grace?
120.1007.
That is 07. Any other corrections or deletions to the agenda? I'm looking for a motion to approve this agenda with the correction to C4, adding paren 07 parens at the end of that piece.
I will move the second. I will move.
Mrs. Emeka makes the motion, looking for a second.
I second.
Mary Miller with a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Approval to the agenda. At this time, I would like to appoint Carol Ganwa as secretary. And do we have any volunteers as tellers? Greg? And I'll appoint Mary Miller. Thank you. At this point, we'd like to adopt Robert's Rules of Orders for parliamentary procedure. So we need a motion to do that. I will make that motion to adopt parliamentary procedure.
Second.
Second for Bill Kesting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Looking for a motion to approve the August 26, 2013 annual meeting minutes.
I'll move to approve the August 26, 2013 annual meeting minutes.
First by Mary Miller, looking for
I'll
a second. Second, Robin Kindich. All in favor, say aye.
Discussion?
Sorry, discussion?
Yeah. Were these posted online on our website? I mean, I just got this, I haven't even.
I would have to look. Oh, the posting would be done after they're approved. So if you want some more time, would you let us know that? Was that enough time, Grace?
No, I said go ahead.
Oh, I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, looking for, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Move on to section 10, District Administrator's Report.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson, and welcome everyone. It's great to have such a great turnout. This might be a record of how many people can come to an annual meeting, and that can't be all bad if we're going to talk about student learning. So thank you very much for coming tonight. Last year, I'm starting my third year as the superintendent in the district, and last year I have to tell you that I spent a great deal of time putting together a very long and in-depth report from the district administrator, and saw that many of the people were looking to move on to the budget part. So this year, I tried to take that into consideration, and I only have 4 PowerPoint slides for you tonight, so I'm going to condensely go over the things that we did over the last school year that we should be very proud about. It's not an all-inclusive list by any means. It's not meant to leave anybody out, so I start by saying right away that there are over 200 employees in this district that do a fantastic job day in and day out with children. And I'm just highlighting some of the things that have happened over the course of the last year. I then want to touch a little bit on the school perception survey that we took. And I would mention right off the top that in the history of the school perceptions company, never has a community given back as many surveys as you guys did. 35% return rate, which is the highest return rate that they ever had. So congratulations on that as well. The third part of my slide presentation goes into 4 things that we're talking about for the upcoming school year, and then I end with challenges and opportunities. So that's kind of the gist of what we're going to talk about tonight. So to start out with the 2013-14 year review, the accomplishments, as I stated, there were many, but the first one I wanted to highlight is to Fuel Up to Play 60, because in my opinion, that is exactly what Kewaskum is all about. We have Andrew Carlton, who is the state representative for Fuel Up to Play 60, which is a nationally recognized program, and they were able to go to a convention over the summer in San Antonio, and Terry Miller, our food service director, was part of that group. And Jeff Rotenhouse and Terry, as well as Andrew, put together a commercial that will be shown on TV before Packer games. And that is just highlighting our school district. The whole commercial has Kewaskum in the background. So that is an outstanding accomplishment for our district and much to be proud of. The next thing is, for those of you that weren't aware, we were locked into a co-op agreement in our insurance, for our insurance area. and that was a 3-year contract that we had signed. Last year was the 3rd year of that contract, so we went out and we partnered with the teachers as well as community members as well as board members and went out and sought insurance bids. And we were very fortunate to have Humana come back and bid on our insurance that allowed us to leave the co-op. So a lot of time and effort went into this initiative, and it came out very well for our district. So the insurance upgrade and us being able to control our own destiny with our insurance moving forward is fantastic. We have been involved in a lawsuit since 2010, and it has been long and arduous along the way. A lot of twists and turns, but we are happy to report that as of last month, we were able to settle the lawsuit. That is concluded, and now we can move on and not have that weighing over us and being in the back of our minds. So we're very happy with the conclusion of the, is this still working?
No.
Well, thank you very much for coming tonight. I think it's still. All right, I will continue to try to talk further into the microphone. But in conclusion, the lawsuit is now taken care of and we can move forward. And I'm happy to report that no fund balance was used to take care of the financial aspect of that, so our fund balance was able to stay intact. Bus driver initiative, and it goes without saying, but it's something that's probably overlooked, but the first thing in the morning that most of our kids see is the bus driver when they get on the bus. And that smile and that good morning. From testing. This is Bruce Towell, everybody. Hi, Bruce. Testing.
Bruce Guthrie.
Thank you. See if this one is not, is it working any better? Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Our bus driver initiative, the first thing they see in the morning is a smiling bus driver's face welcoming them onto the bus. That's the first part of the school day for many of our kids. The last thing they see at night is the bus driver saying good night and I hope you have a good night. It's so totally and very important for our school district to make sure that we have a good working relationship with our bus company. And we started an initiative this last year that allowed us to have a luncheon to recognize and appreciate our bus drivers and go over some of the challenges that they're facing. And this year, to start the school year, we initiated a luncheon, last year was a breakfast, today it was a luncheon, and that luncheon was this past week. And we welcomed them back, they got their bus drive routes, we talked about some in-service training and some initiatives that we have going on in the district, and we welcomed them back and reiterated how important it is for them to say good morning to those kids that get on the bus and thanks and have a great night on the way home. So something that we're very proud of. The Respect Initiative, as you went through downtown Kewaskum in the spring of the year, you saw a banner across the road. And the banner talked about anti-bullying and treating people with respect. Because you treat people with respect because of who you are, not because of who they are. So no matter what, you don't have a right to be disrespectful to another human being. And that was the message that we put together with the help of the clergy in our community. And we put up signs around the district, and we put the banner across the road, and we felt very good about that partnership with our clergy. Because part of the Kewaskum difference is trying to expect the whole child. And so that was a great part of what we try to do as far as following the Kewaskum difference. The OLA policy review, Neola is a company that comes in and does policy reviews with districts. And the reason to do that is to make sure that you get up to date and that you are legally being covered. And not only with the policies that you have, but maybe there are some policies that you would like to implement. So we partnered with them, and we met five total days, and a lot of hard work went into that. And the board members that were part of that, Mary Miller, Kim Leister, Grace Miller, who came in and spent an entire day 5 times for us to work through that along with the administrative team. That is was a great challenge and a successful venture that we put together. We are continuing, and those of you that might have noticed that we were in the library earlier today, we do have a policy committee, and we have new faces and different sets of eyes taking a look at the policies, and we're just going to go over the draft and make sure it says what we wanted it to say, and then look for the board to approve that in the upcoming months. Anyone that's been following the school district for the last few years knows that we have some budgetary issues. And we have, as you'll see later on in the slideshow from Julie, you'll see more in-depthly what they are. But one of the things that we wanted to make sure that we did this year with the 2013-14 school year was to make sure that we stayed under budget. So we're happy to report that not only did we stay under budget, but we were able to take care of the lawsuit as well as put some money in fund balance, and Julie will expand on that later, but we're very happy to report that. Another great opportunity initiative that we started this last year was to take a look at a charter school. And a charter school is nothing more than using unconventional, non-traditional ways to educate kids. Doesn't necessarily make it better, it just makes it different. And to be a comprehensive school district, you have to have all different types of learning for kids. So we took on the initiative to see if we could put together a planning grant that would be approved. It's a very competitive grant from the state of Wisconsin. 8 of them were given out this year. And see if we could put together a plan that would be acceptable to the Department of Public Instruction as far as an initiative that would make a lot of sense in the greater Milwaukee area for an elementary education. So we put together an asynchronous, anytime learning charter school based on badge learning. And those of you that have been involved in Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts, you know what a badge is. And you have to do things, you have to experience things, you have to do things, and you have to learn things to earn the badge. So instead of maybe getting a grade at the end of 1st grade, you could potentially earn a badge. So it's a different way of learning, and it has different components to it. Again, it doesn't make it better or worse, just makes it different. And in today's world, the more comprehensive or differentiation you can have in your learning, the better off we're going to be. So for us to be viable and to try to attract and retain our students, we're looking at the charter school grant, and happy to report that we did receive a $150,000 grant to look at planning. That doesn't mean we have to implement. This money is for planning purposes only over the next year. And they also threw in something that we weren't aware of, an extra $50,000 if we resubmit our budget, including that extra $50,000 by October 1st. So we're really excited about that situation, and proud that we were able to write a grant that was accepted, a very competitive, like I said, one of 8 school districts from around the state. So that means that they have faith in us and they like our idea. The final thing I put up here in the review is summative assessments. And what that means is we've been piloting a program for the last 2 years on teacher effectiveness. This year, it is mandatory that we have a new teacher effectiveness model in place. And that teacher effectiveness model obviously is dealing with how teachers teach students. And I would suspect that the best way I can categorize it is it starts to take a look at if children are learning versus if teachers are teaching. And it takes a look at assessment as much as outside assessment. So it will take into consideration children's learning and self-assessment by teachers. And it's something that we put a lot of time and energy into, and from everything that we've heard, we are right where we need to be with the implementation of that project for this upcoming school year. And that's a credit to the pilot program and to all the teachers that have been involved in that thus far. One of the other things that I mentioned already was the community survey. We brought in, and the board approved, a school perceptions. It's a company that come in and do survey of our community members. And the idea behind the survey was to get feedback from as many people as we possibly can. And I believe that we had just under 700 responses back. So based on the number of responses, the information we received back from the survey is got pretty high probability. Anytime you're over 25% return, it's pretty accurate data, and we were at 34%. And as I said, a credit to everybody in the community that did receive the survey and fill it out. So thank you very much for doing so. So I just put on here the 5 things that were highlighted as things that our community, through the survey, they want us to make sure that we address. First one is prepare students for life after high school. And that is what we call, in today's world, we call that college and career readiness. So everything that we do, we try to give a student a ticket for the next part of their life, not a receipt for sitting in a chair for 13 or 14 years. So we're looking at making sure that they are college and career ready. One of the things that we're partnering with the Washington County Workforce Alliance Group, which is a new group put together to talk about how we can better meet the needs of our county and our communities within Washington County, because they're looking at a huge shortage of workers in the next 10 years. To partner with the high schools to make sure that high school students and teachers and parents have an idea of what manufacturing looks like nowadays, because it's not the same as it was even 10 or 15 years ago. So this year we're going to be working on that initiative, and one of the things we're going to do in October is to actually take a trip, have our teachers take a trip to area businesses to see what they look like. And hopefully we can get parents to come as well as do some field trips with our students. So that's one of the initiatives that came about from the survey. Increase student achievement in literacy and reading, and increase achievement in math. Those are things that people mentioned that they wanted us to work on. And because of that, in tune with that, we started a literacy project this year. And that literacy project is talking about good universal instruction in the classroom and what that looks like across all content areas. In the state of Wisconsin, there are 21 content areas. So we are going to be partnering with a company by the name of Black & Black. They started in the spring and will continue to work with us for the next 2 years that will hit and reach every student, every teacher in the district. And they are going to be working one-on-one with each one of our teachers, 4K through 12, to work on literacy and what good universal instruction looks like across all the content areas. The next few items are to recruit and retain high-quality staff. That was one of the top, as I mentioned here, one of the top 5 things that the community asked us to do, to find out what it is that we can do to attract and retain high-quality staff. The next thing was to maintain, strengthen opportunities in the tech education classes. Again, talking about that initiative to go out into the workforce, into the manufacturing jobs, is part of that goal that we've gotten from the community as well. And then the final thing is communication. We're putting out a newsletter in conjunction with the Statesman this week. Hopefully everybody will receive that on Thursday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, when you get your Statesman. We also need to look at phone messaging, returning phone calls in an appropriate period of time, website development, Facebook, involving Twitter, and also the grade book. And the grade book is, for the parents in the room, is when you go online and you take a look and see how your student is doing. If that is not updated, that is something that we've heard continually from parents, is that they would like to see that updated on a regular basis so they can monitor their child's grades better. So that is going to be one of the initiatives that we have moving forward. Planning in preparation for this coming school year. The first thing is that we put together and we partnered with the Board of Education, and this came through your leadership team, your administrative team. We thought that we needed to put on paper what our strategic plan was for a given year and what the goals were associated with that. We took that to the board retreat, which was in July. We had our second board retreat. This is the second annual board retreat where we met and we discussed commonalities of what we wanted to see for the upcoming school year. This will go back in front of the board on September 8th for finalization. You'll give them one last look at it, and then you'll see it on the website. But it has 5 main categories, and those 5 categories are facilities and operations, teaching and learning, workforce engagement and development, technology, and communication, as well as community engagement. So those are the 5 areas that have been identified by your administrative team, along with help from the board who gave us those ideas, and we tried to put some structure around them. Obviously, the charter school is an opportunity for us moving forward. We're going to be doing the planning of that, and Joel J. along with many of the staff out at Wayne, will be working on that diligently throughout the course of the year, as well as the rest of your administrative team, and you will get monthly updates on that. Very exciting opportunity for us. Compensation schedule. One of the things that is a residual of some of the recent law changes is what is it that we have for a compensation schedule for our teachers, and in fact for our other staff members as well. And one of the things that we are going to work diligently on this school year is trying to put together a salary schedule with input from the faculty as well as the board, as well as the administrative team. And we partner with a company called MRA to help us facilitate this and come up with an idea or a plan that makes sense and is sustainable for our community, makes sense from a financial standpoint, as well as has input and buy-in from our teaching staff. And finally, the Kewaskum difference is something that we banter about. It's on the website, and basically it's trying to take how can Kewaskum stay viable in an ever-changing world? And that ever-changing world needs to mean that we have to be able to compete in a global society. We have to have the same opportunities here as they do down the street in West Bend or Slinger or Hartford, because those are the people that we compete with for our children. The second thing is that because of our size, let's use that as an advantage instead of a disadvantage. And that advantage is that we can use the entire community to raise the child. So the anti-bullying, the respect initiative, working with our clergy, partnering with other things along the school year to educate the whole child is something that we can do, and we can make that a signature of our district, something that would be an attraction. And the third part of it is that personal attention, small town feel, personal attention. And that is something that we're going to work on diligently here in the upcoming year as far as those communication pieces that we talked about earlier. Because communication is the key to making people feel that they have that personal attention. The final slide I have up there is about challenges and opportunities that are moving forward. And I have to tell you, I've spent a lot of time talking to a lot of people over the last few weeks and months about how to address this audience tonight on this issue. And a lot of thought and time and effort went into it. And I guess I'd start with the challenge, the opportunities. The one that we've already talked about that is pretty much on the front burner is the charter school. initiative. And what we need to do over the next few weeks and months is put together an 18-month timeline along with the charter school people. And there is a network of people that we will partner with to do that. And we need to put together an 18-month timeline. If we decide to go with the charter school, this is what the things that need to get done on this timeline. The second thing is, with the charter school, is we need to put a different budget together to get that extra $50,000. That is just a huge opportunity for us that we cannot afford to not take advantage of. So over the next few weeks, we need to resubmit our budget, including that $50,000, and we're very confident that we can do that. The third part of it is that we need to put together a governance board. And in a charter school, the governance board actually runs the school, not the school board. So the school board signs off that we want to do a charter school. Once they sign off that we do a charter school, then the governance board actually gets the say of how the school operates. So putting together that governance board is going to be very important over the next few weeks, and it's part of the whole process to make sure that we can implement if we decide to implement. Challenges, opportunities can turn into challenges, challenges can turn into opportunities. And one of the challenges that we have before us is something that, quite frankly, can split a community. It can lead to personal attacks. It can be something that can be held against people for a variety of reasons. It's a very passionate issue, and that is our issue about the Wisconsin academic standards. And two of them specifically, which are named the Common Core standards in English, language arts, and math. And like I said, I put a lot of thought, listened to a lot of people, had a lot of presentations, different viewpoints on this point, and I'm sure many of you are here tonight to talk about the budget and how it relates to the Common Core. And so, again, I would stipulate at the beginning, anything that brings people together to talk about education and our kids can't all be bad. So to have people talking about education, that's a good thing. I guess what I can say very truthfully and very much sincerely to you is that we have tried to do everything we can from a local situation to try to educate people. We have an arena that we operate under, and that arena starts next Tuesday morning with the kids coming back to school. No matter what we talk about tonight, the kids are coming next Tuesday morning, and we need to put the best teachers, put the best materials in front of our kids, because third graders only get a chance at third grade one time. And we can ill afford to not give them the best opportunity and experience we can, day in and day out. And that's what your competent, caring, committed, concerned staff members here in Kewaskum are going to do. And no matter what gets bantered about tonight, we can only control what's in our local arena. And we hire the teachers, we put together the curriculum, we give them the materials, and that is something that we do on a yearly basis. It's something that we've done for many, many years, and will hopefully do, and are committed to trying to do, not only for ourselves, but for this community, so we have that local control. That's the arena that we operate under. There's a whole nother couple of arenas, the state and the federal level, and somebody else is going to settle those arguments in the next few months or years. But locally, Tuesday morning kids are coming, and we got to be ready. We got to do the best job we can with those kids. So that's what we hope that you will allow us to do. And we know that this is a very tenuous situation. We're not making any judgments about the righteousness or about the correctness of the issue, except we'll give you any answers we can. We invite you to talk to Mr. Pizzata. He has a website and a presentation. We will talk to you about our local situation as best as we can, and we will try to be as honest and transparent as we can about what we control in our arena. The other arenas, quite frankly, is somebody else's argument. So thank you very much for coming tonight, and with that, I will turn it over to the next part of our agenda.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smalley. A lot went on in the past year, and a lot's going to go on in this upcoming year, so thank you for covering that. On to the next section is old business, which we
Point of
don't...
order, Mr. Chairman. Are we allowed to ask any questions after this responses report?
That doesn't appear to be on the agenda.
So we can't ask any questions.
There is a section, if you look, 12D. It's got questions.
Okay, so there we will.
That's why it's there. Old business, again, we do not have any old business to carry forward, so we're on to the new business section, which section A is the presentation of our 2014-2015 budget with our finance manager, Julie Dorsey.
Nope.
And I don't project very well, so we're going to get this right. How's that? In the back?
Yeah.
Okay. This is the budget hearing and annual meeting. There's 3 parts to this. We start out with the financial results of 13-14, then we move into the budget for 14-15, and then we talk about the tax levy. You can hear me now, can't you? Okay, it's working. The general fund is all financial transactions relating to the district's current operations, except for those required to be accounted for in all funds. So if it's not in another fund, it's here. We ended the year with a surplus of $388,000. The revenues came in over by $43,000, and expenditures were under by $345,000. Surplus or deficit will change over to the fund balance, and so you can see the beginning fund balance, July 1, the addition of the revenues, subtraction of the expenditures, and then the surplus that we saw on the previous page. We add that to the year-end fund balance on June 30th, and it is increased to $3.4 million. Fund balance is assets minus liabilities. Some people get confused about the fund balance. They think it's our cash, and it isn't, because we have receivables and payables in there. It does help us with our cash flow, but it is not entirely cash. This is a history of our fund balance over the last decade. The fund balance is needed to provide funds for emergencies, shortfalls. We talk about shortfalls. Sometimes you might run a deficit budget to cover something that you can't cover out of the regular funds. We can use it for special projects. We can use it to reduce our cash flow, and it has an impact on the bond rating. We have a board policy in this district that our fund balance should never drop below 10%, and we have a recommendation of 15%. We're starting the 14-15 year with a 17.7% fund balance on the general fund. Special education fund is for excess costs of providing special education and related services for students with disabilities. Special education cannot have a deficit or a surplus at the end of the year. We have to do what's called an interfund transfer. So we do a journal entry. Usually it's going to be a deficit because your expenditures will exceed your revenues. We'll do a journal entry, and we'll book a revenue in the special education fund, and we'll book an expenditure in the general fund. Why is this important? Because that inflates both sides. It's a paper entry. It doesn't really mean anything. And so you'll see when we talk about all of the funds together, you're going to see a line item for interfund transfer that pulls it out, and that's why we have to do that. This is a picture of where our revenues lie. You can see that equalization aid and the tax levy are the majority of our funds. Just 8 years ago, the aid was at 49.3 and the tax levy was at 39.9. They're almost reversed. And this is Fund 10 and 27 put together. We call that our operations budget. And here's the same picture on the expenditure side. The biggest bulk, because we are a labor organization, we provide a service, is going to be salaries and benefits. This last year it was at 74%. This next year it's going to go down. Debt service fund 38, this is money that we borrow that comes within our revenue limit. So we don't go to referendum for this, we have to pay for it within the context of our own budget. If you want to look at a detailed layout of our funds, on page 14 in the booklet, it shows what our outstanding balance is and what of our payments are. When this debt is retired, the funds become available for our budget for additional expenditures. This was money, let's see, 2011, there was refinancing and then capital improvements, and in 2012 we refinanced the unfunded pension liability, which was at a much higher rate. Right now we owe just a little over $2 million. Fund 39 is what we call the referendum debt. We had to get the community's permission to borrow this money, and when this debt goes away, the money does not come back into our budget, it reduces the tax levy. This was borrowed to build the elementary school, and the principal balance at this point in time is $4.75 million. Food service operates under its own fund. It's allowed to have a surplus, but it's not allowed to have a deficit. So if you have a food service department that runs a deficit, we have to do an interfund transfer again to cover that deficit, and that would come under the general fund. We have not had that problem here. We've always run at a surplus, and right now we have a fund balance in this account of over $90,000. Community Services Fund covers community activities that are defined within the statutes. There's a lot of rules that go along with this, and they keep adding more and more every year. We had a surplus of $16,000, which gives us a fund balance of that $97.76. We actually ran a deficit for 2 years in a row, about $3,000, and so we purposely had a surplus budget for 13-14, and we did even better than that on the actual, and so we built our fund balance back up in this. Our revenues in this fund include the rental income, gate receipts, fees, and then a tax levy of $35,000, which is not changing. Now we come to the 14-15 budget. The Kewaskum School District has a budget cycle that begins in December with revenue projections. January through March, we compile the budget requests and staffing costs, and in April, the Board of Education receives their first draft of the working budget. In May and June, that working budget is updated. In July, the board adopts a preliminary budget, and then August through October, that time frame we're in right now, the preliminary budget is updated to reflect all the changes in staffing, open enrollment, and then the final certifications from the state. And in October, the Board of Education adopts the budget and sets the final tax levy. This process includes a lot of people, all of our administrators, a lot of our teachers. Everybody plays a role in building this budget over that 9-month period. We had to make some budget assumptions when we built this. We assumed that there was going to be no change in enrollment or open enrollment. We'll get those final numbers in September, and we'll have to change the budget to reflect those numbers. We also assume no change in the equalized property valuation. That's important because the equalized property valuation, which is designated by the Department of Revenue, that plays a part in our revenue and our equalized aid calculations. And at the time we had the budget approved, we did not know that we had gotten the charter school grant, and so that's not built in. We'll be adding that. The two estimates we had to do with the revenue limit estimate and the equalization aid for the reasons that we just talked about. When we build a budget, we start out with the revenues. And when we talk about revenues, we're going to start with our big items. And so we start with the revenue limit. The revenue limit determines the maximum amount of revenue we can receive from general state aids and local tax levies. General state aids for us is the equalization aid, and we all know what a local tax levy is. When we talk about the revenue limit, I call it a pie always, so you're going to see me walking around doing this. The revenue limit is a pie that has two pieces to it, the aid and the levy. When one gets bigger, the other one gets smaller. And so that's how this formula, the revenue limit then determines the tax levy by those two pieces of pie. So we start out with the revenue limit, which is a formula designated by the state. We minus the state general aid, which is a formula designated by the state, and then the resulting number will be the tax levy. This year we have a $75 increase in a per pupil amount, but we had fewer students. So the impact of the decline in enrollment was greater than the per pupil increase, and that means the revenue limit went down $292,000 or $292,999. We're still waiting for the September pupil count, and so that number might get tweaked a little bit. This is our revenue limit history. What you can see when you're starting at the bottom and going up is that during those increasing years, the per pupil amount was going up between $200 and $300 per pupil. And then we hit a stop. And then in 11-12, our per pupil increase was actually a decrease of $529. And what happened there was the state wanted to reduce the amount of funding that they would give to the equalization aid. And the only way they could do that, because it's a pie with two pieces, so if they reduce the equalization aid piece, the levy would get much bigger. So what they said was, well, we're going to reduce the amount that you're allowed to use in your revenue limit and make your pie smaller. And that way the impact on the levy wasn't as harsh. They've been building it up a little bit, but nothing like we've seen in the past. The next year we got a $50 per pupil, and then the next two $75. Now this is the biennium. The state has a biennium budget. We're in year 2 of that, so we really don't know where it's going to go next year. The state funds education in 3 ways. The general aid that we talked about, and for us that's equalization aid. There's categorical aids, and then there's straight state grants. The equalization aid calculation includes a membership FTE, which is our pupil counts of our resident students. The equalized property value, which has got nothing to do with your assessed value. This is a value that's assigned by the Department of Revenue. And when you divide the one by the other, you get what's called a equalized value per member. And if you've ever heard the term property rich, property poor, that's what they're talking about. What they do with that formula is they say, how does that compare to the state average? And Kewaskum School District is considered property rich. We're higher than the state average. And that's going to hurt us when it comes to the equalization aid formula. The student membership that we use in the formula is going to be our resident students. So this is not going to be our students sitting in our chairs. These are going to be the students that are residents in this area, and even if they leave to go out, say for open enrollment, we still get to count them for the formulas. So when we talk about losing students and it impacts the formulas, it's not the students that we're losing out because of open enrollment. We still get to count those. But even though it's resident students, our numbers are going down. And so that will have a negative impact on those formulas. This is our general aid history. We received an increase this year of $278,000. It's an increase of 3.6%. An increase in general aid does not mean we get more money. It means that the levy goes down. Remember, back to the pie, 2 pieces. This piece went up, so the other piece gets smaller. Now, if it were to go the other way, like it did last year, we received less in general aid. It didn't mean we had less money. It meant the levy went up. This is the general fund budget for next year. We're going to see a reduction in budget of $143,000. And how that came to be was our revenue limit went down at $292,999, and then we got an additional amount for per pupil adjustment aid, and so the net impact on our budget is going to be a negative $143,000. This is the special education fund. We're not going to see much changes, and this is a fluid number. We have to make changes to this based on our federal aids that we get, and we're still waiting for final numbers on those. When we take the Fund 10 and Fund 27 together and then remove that interfund transfer that we were talking about, we call that our operating budget, and this is what our operating budget has looked like over the last few years. You can see that because of our revenue limits going down, our budgets keep going down. This year we've got a reduction of $172,943 between the two funds. That's a decrease of just under 1%. But since 2010-11, we've seen a cut of $1.9 million. That's 8.5%. And this is a picture of our revenues. Once again, 8 years ago, the tax levy and the equalization aid were flipped. And this is our expenditures. Our salaries and benefits, which is our biggest portion, is decreasing from 74% down to the 72.5%. Debt service, you're going to notice that we always have either surplus or deficit. That's because our fiscal year goes from July 1 to June 30th, but our debt service has to be accrued over a calendar year, so we have to build in enough to cover anything that happens between January and December, so you're crossing over into the next fiscal year. So we never get that nice little neat package with a zero on the bottom. All it means is we have an interest payment coming up between July 1 and the end of December. This year, our principal payment under Fund 38 is $290,000. Fund 39, the same thing. Our principal payment this year is $875,000, and this one will be paid in full in 2019. Food service, we're seeing a dramatic decrease, and that's because our expectation for revenues is going to go down, and we had to match that. We want to be conservative. We're hoping the revenues will be higher, but we're being fiscally responsible by budgeting for less. Community service, the Fund 80, like I said before, there's more rules every year, so we have to show you what we're using it for. The only difference between last year and this year on those programs at the bottom is that we added a little bit of money for the community use of our school facilities. Mainly it's for some labor to cover the weekend use. Otherwise, all of those other pieces were in there last year. We have the Kewaskum Theater, we have a summer theater program, the fitness center, which is the community fitness center, and the food pantry. And the revenues would be $35,000 for the tax levy, $20,400 for rental income on the revenue side, and $4,000 in service fees, community service fees. This is all funds combined. It's on page 10 in your booklet. It's much prettier in the booklet, but I can't get all those lines on this screen. You'll see when in your book it lays it out by the funds, and then it'll show you the interfund transfer and then the net, which comes out to the $22,865,515 on the expenditure side, the $22,845,548 on the revenue. And you'll see that we are decreasing revenues total across all funds, $290,000. We're decreasing expenditures, all funds, $281,000. So we're looking at 1.22 and 1.25 decreases percent. This is a comparison number that school districts like to use to show how they are compared to districts. Either sometimes they'll do it in their seesaw, sometimes they'll do geographical areas. These seem to be the districts that are close to us that we, I can't even tell you why. This is the ones that we've always used. And we're about the middle. You can see the state average is up towards the top in that pink. Now this is what we call a total education cost. The DPI uses it. And it includes everything except food service and community service. So that means we've got debt. We happen to be a district who's got Fund 39 debt right now for a building. That's going to make ours look a little bit bigger. Okay, let's talk about the tax levy. So we showed you this formula before. The revenue limit determines the tax levy. Our revenue limit was at $18,050,000. Our state general aid is at 7.9. When we subtract the one from the other, we come up with the tax levy of 10,103. And this is the revenue limit is only going to dictate our Fund 10 and 27, our operating costs. This is another way to look at it. Up on the right, you can see that our revenue limit changed. It was a negative 292,999. We, in addition, got some aid, additional aid, that 278,401. So the bottom line is that our allowed levy is going to go down over $500,000, almost $600,000. And these are the actual line items. So you see the Fund 10 is decreasing to 5.5, but then the Fund 38, Fund 39, a little bit of a change. Our total is going to be that 4.9%. Now, the school board knows how I feel about talking about the tax rate. It's misleading because this has nothing to do with the tax rate that you'll be assessed on your properties. What this tax rate is a formula at the bottom of our revenue limit calculation. It takes the equalized property value, divides it by 1,000, and then divides that into the total property taxes. Really, the only purpose it serves is to compare yourself to other districts. And right now, we don't even have all of the pieces because we don't know what that equalized property value is going to be. We won't get certified for another month. But common sense says total property taxes goes down 4.9. If we assume that there's no change in the equalized property value, then the total tax rate will also go down 4.9. And right now, that's looking like 50 cents per thousand. This will change by the end of October because we'll have our equalized values. It's just a number though. We'll put in that equalized value, it becomes the denominator in that fraction, but it really doesn't change the levy. The total levy is a 4.9% decrease. This is the history of our levy with all of its components. You can see the red is that Fund 39 piece, which is going to drop off in 2019. And then the other little guys on top. This is a comparison of the tax levy and state aid. Remember we said that 8 years ago the levy and the equalization aid were flipped when we were talking about those pie charts? And this is a picture of what happened. In the mid-90s, the state committed to 2/3 funding of school districts. And at that point, when that happened, the blue line, which is the tax levy, started to go down, and the equalized aid started to go up. And you can see it crossed over there in 95, 96, and the aid started exceeding the levy. Well, that 2/3 commitment ended in 2003, so if you go all the way to the middle, you can see where that biggest bump is, where the biggest gap is, 2003, that's when it ended. And then you can see the pieces coming back together again because that commitment to the funding was no longer there. So now we've crossed over again to where we were back in the early 90s, where the levy is now higher than the aid. Oops, sorry. Okay, so on the agenda, this slide represents the budget hearing portion, which is questions related to the budget presentation. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question regarding why do we have this annual budget meeting earlier than why not have it after school starts when we get more years and you state examples? Because the final budgets from school districts do not have to be submitted like the county governments or tax bill preparation until October 31st, but we have to be there by December 1st. So why can't we have this annual meeting later and have more accurate figures?
Yeah, you can have it later. State statute requires that if you don't, tonight one of your powers is that you get to set the annual meeting for next year. If you don't do that, then by state statute we have to have it in June something. Is it July? Okay. Which is way too early, and so Kewaskum School District at its annual meeting has been setting it at August, at the last week of August.
Okay, so tonight we could set it for late September.
We could. Now, the one thing to keep in mind is we are a school district, even though our fund balance is nice, it's not enough that we can get by without short-term borrowing. Short-term borrowing is it's general fund borrowing that we can do because we start with our expenditures now. We don't get our first tax payment until January, and then nowadays you can split it into two, so we don't even get it all in January. We get some in February and then the rest in August. Under the rules of short-term borrowing, the annual meeting has to approve the levy before we can borrow. Did I say that right?
Okay, so, but it doesn't make any difference when you have the
Well, yeah, because we have to make payroll. If we had any later, we'd probably have problems making the October payroll.
How much later? I'm just thinking because a lot of people, this is the last week of summer, a lot of people are on vacation. Whatever, they don't have the opportunity or here to be at the how much later do you have this annual meeting before it's presented?
I'd be comfortable with 2 more weeks. After that, it would be a problem.
But it would be
Yeah, technically, you guys get to set it. We just give you the recommendation because that's what it goes in.
We can have it as late as possible, as long as we can still get the notes approved for short-term borrowing, because we're going to be a district that needs to short-term borrow, and so it has to go out to bid, and then the bids have to be accepted and accepted by the school board, and then there's some paperwork that goes along with that. So for us to make payroll, there's a timeline that pushes that back. So we'll look at that timeline, but I think what Julie was trying to say is we could probably comfortably push it back into the first week of September without doing a lot of research, but other than that, if we went any later than that, we would be hurting ourselves as far as short-term borrowing.
The state statute says in the state that it can be no later, the annual meeting can be no later than October 1st.
Correct. But for short-term borrowing, they won't borrow us money unless the board ultimately sets a tax levy, which is based on the annual meeting.
Now, the other thing to keep in mind is if you're thinking that if we wait a little bit longer, we would have more information, which is what the board chose to do this year for the preliminary budget. They were approving the budget that passed in June, and we were completely missing a key component of the budget, which was the equalization aid, that general aid, and so they moved it forward. So if you're looking at moving it forward to get additional information, we really won't get that until October. That's when the revenue limit is certified.
Can you give me an estimate, and I'm not going to do a tight estimate, a rough estimate of what percentage the revenue changes from what we know today versus what we'll know in October? If you were to force to guess on a percentage basis so we can talk real numbers, how far, quote unquote, off might we be? What would you say that number is?
I guess we've seen 1% in the last 2 years.
Okay, so we're looking at 1%, we're looking at, decimals, $200,000?
Yeah, at the most.
So when you're looking at a budget of this size, you are talking $200,000, which is substantial, but we've been running typically, I think for the last 5 years, surpluses of $300,000 plus. So we do have kind of done a good job of building a little bit of buffer in there so that we don't end up short. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
But if I'm understanding this correctly, our student enrollment has continually been going down. So why would we compare to 2 years prior when we know our school enrollment is going down and we're not going to have that financial money coming in? So why are we counting on something that we know is not going to be there?
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. So you're saying if I know, you're saying we should project that it's going to go down, and then we should reduce the budget.
Well, that's what companies do.
Right.
If they're running a lack or a decrease in their company, they say, hey, we're going to decrease our budget accordingly. Well, we know our school enrollment's been down. So why are we not including that with going on figures 2 years prior when our enrollment goes up? Well, we know our enrollment is up.
So,
I guess what I'm looking for is here, we're getting a lot of unknowns. When we wait until October, I don't know if I'm sure on this, but I think we can check on it. Somebody might know it here. The actual students that are attending in the school, what you're receiving from the Fed, from the state, is decided on the actual enrollment in October, bodies present. So why wouldn't we wait until we know actualities instead of, I mean, everybody sitting here, I can't run my home budget on unknowns. I have to cut everything knowing that things are going up while everything else is staying, maybe steady or going down.
Can I handle this one, Drew? I think I got a good, I've taken some notes on your budget information. We do have the smallest budget in 10 years. We do have the smallest state aid in 15 years. So we have built that down. If you had to change your household budget, let's say at the annual is $50,000. Okay, that same 1% that we're waiting to find out in October is $500 in a year. So $42.50 a month that you'd be worried, is it off or not? So we do have to kind of keep it in perspective. When you do run a business, you have to make management decisions sometimes with 90% of the data. So this isn't uncommon because we're actually looking at knowing the number within 1%. I don't know how much more we're looking to change anything. When you're looking at 1%, we typically run surpluses nearly double that 1% fudge factor that we're concerned about. So when you get down to brass tacks on this, we're pretty tight. I don't know realistically how much tighter you get, especially when I put it in the household terms for you to make it more understandable for all of us. I don't think any of us have a $22 million home budget.
I understand that, but we're also looking at things we do know coming in the future. And back to the first statement that was made on Common Core, a lot of people don't realize Common Core, Fed, stopped subsidizing in 2014, at the end of 2014. So why don't we include that in our budget going forward, knowing that we're going to be missing quite a bit of money? We're not talking $4.52 here. And to go back to my house budget, because you bought it in, I don't borrow what I can't pay back, because I may lose my house.
I don't understand the comparison, but
Well, you bought the comparison and my house budget.
we're talking, I said $42.50, not $4.52. We can argue numbers all day long.
You know,
but
we need to look forward and put everything out on the board here.
it is on the board.
So let me take a different take on it. School funding is really a ridiculous thing. I mean, I think we can all probably agree on that, because we are going to be in October 1/3 of the way through the school year before we approve the budget for that school year. So as of July 1st, we're already spending money that we don't know exactly what we're going to have until October. So it's kind of a goofy timeline. We start working on the budget probably the day after the budget's approved. So in November and December, we start working on the budget. And what we were trying to explain with Grace's question earlier is, yeah, we could wait until October if we didn't have to short-term borrow, because that fund balance that she talked about, that's just a given snapshot on a given day. On a different day, it could be less, and there's not enough in there to cover payroll because we only get paid certain times of the year from the state government. So we got to have money to make it through for payroll. So we have to short-term borrow. And most school districts, I'm not going to say most, many school districts in the state of Wisconsin have to short-term borrow. So we are given a number on July 1st that's pretty close, maybe within 1 or 2% of what we're going to have to spend for that year. So we're not overspending money that we don't have. So we have a good idea, but we don't have the exact idea until October. And back to your question is at the third Friday count in September is where we get the actual enrollment. So that's where we can really solidify it, but we can't wait to that because we start our year on July 1st. So we have to take that opportunity, that guesstimate, if you will, that's usually pretty close, within 1% or so, of what we think we're going to get for this year and build our budget around it. And so the one slide that you saw with the big, there was like a plateau and then it went down, is that we've cut $1.9 million out of the budget in the last 4 years. Because we knew going into it that we weren't going to have this much money, so we cut, anticipating in that October meeting that this is what it was going to be. And usually we're pretty close because it doesn't vacillate that much. And they have something called a hold harmless in there. So even if you go down significantly, they don't hold you, it's hold harmless for up to 3 years. So having said all that, we aren't spending any more money than what we are allotted to if we balance the budget. And over the last few years, we've come to you with a balanced budget. So we're not spending any more money than we are allotted by the state government. And that, again, goes back to that revenue limit minus the state aid, that's what your tax levy is. So the combination of a couple of factors have led to the 50-cent tax rate decrease for next year, which is great because that's saving you money. We wish we could say it was, all our doing, but that wouldn't be fair because when it goes up, it's not all our doing either. But it is a combination of getting more state aid, but it's also a combination of us cutting our budget over the last 5 years. So we stay within our means. What we're trying to say is that we have to short-term borrow, and we probably will have to short-term borrow in the future. So at some point, we have to go out and ask for a bid on that loan. And that bid is usually in early September. So for us to get somebody to bid on that loan, they have to have a guarantee. And that guarantee is to know that there's going to be a tax levy of some sort for the district. As silly as that sounds, because every school year, every school district has to set its tax levy, they still want to see that. So that's really the big reason why we don't wait until October. Yes?
So if I'm understanding you correctly, and I understand the short-term borrowing, we know enrollment's going down, and then our need to put money out to support Common Core or whatever the heck we decide to go with. That changes our expenditures in the next coming years, but we don't care about that because we do it 1 year at a time. My understanding is correct.
If I'm hearing you correctly, every year is a standalone budget year. So what we do last year, that's done and gone. Whatever we closed out, we had an excess of money, we put that in fund balance. Okay, so that year's done. Now we're in this year. This year ends June 30th. Whatever it happens to be at the end of June 30th, it's a standalone year, and we start all over again next year.
Yes. And?
Could you define on page 4 of the budget, under instructional services, the second, undifferentiated curriculum, regular curriculum, and physical curriculum. Could you explain those, and then I have a question about the figures.
Sure. Undifferentiated curriculum means we don't break it down by subject area, so we pretty much expend all of our elementary schools to that. So that's undifferentiated. Regular curriculum is going to be when we start breaking it down by subject area, so math, social studies, those kinds of things. Vocational is going to be specific to the vocational areas, like we used to call tech ed. And then physical curriculum is your physical education, PE, okay. That's what those mean.
Okay, my question is, if you follow the undifferentiated curriculum column, if you look at the 2013 and 14 budget of $3,700,000 and subtract the 2014-15 budget, that's where you got your figure of $106,019. But if you subtract the 2014 budget from the unaudited 2013, it's only 69,800. So there's actually a difference of only 69,000 of what actually was spent this year and what you're budgeting. There's a big difference between subtracting one budget from the other budget and coming up with this 106,000. The actual budget amount is not 106,000, it's 69,000.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We
And
compare
why do we do
budget to
that?
budget. This is the format that we're supposed to show you. But that difference that you're talking about is one of the areas that contributed to that surplus of $388,000. And so things will happen during the school year. You may get a long-term leave, and so that you're not spending as much on salaries. We may have someone quit, and then we don't replace them that fast. We may not be able to move forward on some projects that we thought we were supposed to do. Those are the things that will break out into individual areas and total up at $388,000. Did I answer your question?
Well, it looks, I mean, it looks different. It just looks like you're decreasing the budget by a lot, and you're not. It's not being decreased by, if you compare it to what you actually spent this past school year, the difference is it's really less.
And sometimes actual will come in a little bit higher. Somebody will change insurances mid-year. Those things happen, and that's why we always compare budget to budget. When we build our budget, we truly think that's what we're going to spend. And so when we build the new one, we base it off the old one, taking into consideration the changes. And when we talk about changes, the biggest area is going to be staffing and benefits.
The next item then, regular curriculum, what you actually spent unaudited in 13-14 school year is what you're budgeting for the 14-15. How come that is the same amount, or close to it? You're not making any change at all. I mean, you're using what was actually spent. That's the proposed budget item.
Those particular expenditures rolled over and are accurate, and so we stay with those expenditures. Can I move on to another question? In the back, okay, sure.
The regular curriculum, that would be money spent on teachers learning about how to teach Common Core and things like that. Is that what I'm getting out of it?
Anything under that instructional services subheading is actual in the classroom. So we are required to break things down in 3 different areas. You can see we've got instructional services, that means in the classroom, face-to-face with kids, delivering instructional services. The next one would be support services, and that would be staff development or pupil services. And then there's the non-program at the bottom. So that first area that you were talking about, those are instructional in the classroom with students.
Okay. Is there any way I had sent a certified letter to Mr. Hanson and Mr. Smazel on July 18th, and I requested a motion or authorization tonight that the Kewaskum School District provide funds for any federal aligned standards, curriculum aligned to those standards, or tests aligned to those standards for this year. And I wanted that to be a separate budget item for the community to vote on whether or not we would authorize that. That is not on here. There is a way to do that. I'm sure you know how much is being spent on that. So how can we get that broken down?
Yeah, I'll answer that one. With respect to what can be added to the agenda and what can be moved from the electors at an annual meeting, the statute's pretty clear. It forth certain powers and certain provisions. And with respect, Mr. Hanson and Mr. Smazel had shared your request. The items that you had proposed, first and foremost, are beyond the scope of the annual meeting, the items that can be approved as part of the annual meeting by the electorate. The second part of it is that the budget is prepared and presented by the administration. The electorate has an opportunity to weigh in, to comment, to ask questions, but ultimately it's up to the board and to the district to approve the budget.
So in other words, you're telling us that if we vote tonight, vote down the whole budget, the board can come back and tell us too bad we're passing.
Yeah, you won't actually vote on the budget tonight. You'll have the opportunity to vote on the levy. And yeah, by state law, the board ultimately has to take a look at what the electors vote for a levy at the annual meeting and make a determination as to whether that is enough to fund operations in the district or not by November 1st. And so if for whatever reason the electors tonight decided not to vote a levy that was high enough to fund operations, the board by law would have to take it upon themselves and does have the authority then to adopt a levy that would support those operations.
That's exactly what I was just gonna say. Why are we here?
Yeah.
Well, you can do what you want, but it don't matter.
You're here to be heard,
No,
and you're here to ask questions, and you're here to have your input. That's why you're here.
We're not being heard. If we vote down this tax levy, we want you guys to hear us. But the majority here are against the Common Core implementation, and we want you to hear it, or there could be, you're telling us that we could vote you out in April.
I beg to characterize that the majority are here to discuss Common Core. We are here to be informed, we are here to get educated, we're here to hear about our school district. But I don't want to be lumped into a group.
The fact of the matter
Anybody?
I
is,
apologize, okay? But there's more and more of us coming forward and telling you guys that we don't want this.
Mhm.
And we're just asking you guys to listen.
and we are listening, we've had multiple conversations.
Troy, let me take that. And we are hearing you, and you know that. We spent an hour and 20 minutes out in the parking lot with Ann, and we're listening. All I'm saying to you, and I'm saying this from my heart, is that even in our conversations out in the parking lot, it's not supposed to be taken personally because it's not us. It's a local school district that has kids coming on Tuesday morning. And we gotta teach our kids.
It's personal, it's our children. It is
Yes,
personal.
in that, you're right, it is.
Well, then why can't we vote on whether it's
Tell me it's
on
not
Common Core or not? Why can't we have a vote on that?
One person at a time.
So my point is that we are listening. And I understand what you're saying, and my answer to you is we hear what you're saying. We're gonna do locally everything we can to preserve the rights for you guys locally. We can't control other things. That's a different arena, a different forum, that's a different argument at a different place. And I don't know how else to say it. And I've said it 100 times, and I don't know what else I can
Well,
say.
you brought in Mr. Pizzetta last meeting, and we did not allow for questions from the community. So how
That's
are
not
you
true.
listening?
That's not true.
You did not. You did not have an open meeting that we could ask him questions.
He did a
You guys
presentation.
asked him questions.
He did a presentation, and you had every opportunity. He said he would get back to you via phone, email, or personal conference, whichever you chose.
Why
And
couldn't
then he
we
would
discuss
post
that?
the answers to those questions so that everyone in the community had the opportunity to hear the answers, not just the 40 people in that room. So there was ample opportunity to address that issue.
We feel our job is to educate, and I've said that to both you and Ann the other night. We're trying to educate. We're just trying to give you what we know in today's world, locally, what we can tell you, and we're doing it as transparently and honestly. Anyone that has a question about what we're doing here locally, we've asked you to ask Mark. And some of you have taken advantage of that. And I think he's personally returned every phone call so far. We invite you to come in and take a look at the materials that we're using. If you want to talk to the teachers about the strategies, we're opening it up, and you can call Mark and talk about it. I don't know how else we can try to be educationally and try to meet your needs at the local level. I can't answer some of those other questions. I can't, that's not our arena to try to answer those questions. And that's what we're trying to, you know, the serenity prayer comes in somewhere in here. We're trying to use the wisdom to know what we can control and what we can't. And I don't know that we're ever going to agree. We could potentially disagree, but we got to be ready on Tuesday morning, and that's what we're trying to do.
Do you personally believe that the state Common Core standard is the best for the Kewaskum School District?
130 years ago, they started with Carnegie units in 1892. Ever since 1892,
Just yes or no.
I'm going to get there in just a second. They're going to have to tell us something about what an expectation is, what a standard to complete a course is. Is this better than what was delivered in 1998? I don't think anybody's argued what was better in 1998. This is worse than it was back then. Is it a panacea? Is it going to figure out everything? Is there concerns about it? Is there problems with it? Absolutely. There has been problems for the hundreds of issues that have come before us in the last 130 years. And there's going to continue to be problems. And we're going to have to work through them. But at the local level, we have a responsibility and an obligation for our kids here to put kids in the classroom on Tuesday morning and put teachers in front of them and try to educate them.
That's not the answer at all. Yes or no? Is Common Core
But my opinion doesn't.
best for Kewaskum School District? The very best. Is it the best or not? I mean,
Is it better than what we had? Yes. Is it the best? It will never
we want
be the
the very
best.
best. If we can't have the very best, we don't want it.
And we're working on that.
That's one.
Yes.
Why can't we have a vote on it? Why can we not have a vote on it?
It's never been said that you can't have a vote on it. It's on the agenda, there will be a vote on it tonight.
I'm
Yes.
talking about the
Okay,
Common Core.
sir, I respect the position you hold. You're very knowledgeable. We hired you. We hired you. Okay? However, literacy is down. It's even on the charts. Math is down. I went to school, I got white hair. Okay, a number of years ago, I knew my math. I knew how to read. Don't tell me this Common Core curriculum's better than what we learned. It's proven now.
Again, I don't want to argue that.
Your students
The gentleman asked.
Your students are speaking. They're
Right.
speaking all over Wisconsin because it had started creeping in years ago, Common Core, and everything's been continually going down.
Okay, yes, Mr. Samaza, why don't you answer that question?
The only thing I was going to say is, you know what? It's starting to get personal and it's starting to get passionate, and I understand that.
Show the facts, sir.
But the ACT test scores that just came out last week shows that we're up, that we've had the highest ACT test score in this district than they've had in the last 5 years. So we're moving in the right direction. There's a lot of things that we can celebrate. All I'm saying is that I don't want to divide the community on something I can't control. You want a personal opinion, I can give you a personal opinion, but that doesn't make any difference when the kids come in the door next Tuesday. We're doing the best job we can. Is it better than what it was? My personal opinion is yeah, and it's shared by a lot of people, but that doesn't mean everybody feels that way. So it's a personal opinion.
Mr. Stafford.
Mr. Hanson, this is pretty far off topic of other questions.
You're correct. Just pull that back in. Any other direct budget questions? Mr. Anthem.
I've got two quick ones. On the bottom of page 3 from the minutes that we approved this evening, the levy presented was $10,427,083. A couple 3 slides back, Mrs. Dorson, I thought I saw $10,675,000 for last year. Could you go back a couple slides and see if I was incorrect and catch something? But it looked like there was about a $250,000 swing from what we approved last year in the meeting versus what was actually presented tonight. That's the first question.
That is so long back.
$675. It was a quarter million swing. That was my inquiry. Question number 2, if you could find it, by the way, I don't think you can get some feedback on it. 74% in salaries and benefits last year, and this year you're projected at 72.5. My question is, what constitutes the reduction? Is it a reduction in staff? Would you qualify that 1.5%, please?
We did have a reduction in staff. We have 2 bubble classes. We have 2 bubble classes. Move on to the next. From elementary to secondary, and so we did need 2 teachers. We didn't lay anybody off. That happened through attrition. Does that answer?
Well, you said 2, but the attrition numbers you didn't qualify. I guess, are we shrinking our staff?
Yes.
I don't know what 1.5% of the total number is, but it's a lot more than a couple of total classes, so that's what I was asking. We are shrinking our staffing overall.
Yes.
Support staff, teachers, administration is static, but so teachers and support staff are reducing.
We have 25 administration as well, so yes, in all the areas.
Okay.
And support staff isn't completely done.
Julie, was that number also benefits? And was our insurance a factor in as well?
The insurance costs went down in total, but when it comes to insurance costs for this district did something very unique a few years ago. They put in a flat amount, and they said, we're never going to pay more than this flat amount. And so other districts had percentages, and when those rising costs kept going up, the district's costs kept going up. But because ours was a flat dollar amount commitment, any increases that happened were passed along 100% to the employees. So the savings that came about from this insurance change was also passed along to the employees. So there was no impact on any health insurance.
Also, to quantify that difference, our enrollment is down by 1.05%. So to reduce staffing by reduce wages and benefits by 1.5% seems to be well within a normal range. Grace. Oh, sorry, Mrs. Harmon was first.
I have a question. If the Smarter Balanced Assessment, which is going into effect in 2014-2015, has a financial repercussion on what we're discussing tonight?
There's no costs to the Smarter Balance test. The state absorbs it.
Okay, I have a question. I went and read some of the test questions today, and having been a teacher myself, obviously not at the high school level, and that's what I was looking at. They want the child to tell you their age, their sex, their grade, their race, their height, and their weight. And then they went on to ask safety questions, 11 violence questions.
Mrs. Harmon, why don't we address that? That's a non-budget question. We should address that in the question section at the end of the agenda.
Okay, I thought we were there.
Grace. Next question. Okay. With that, we're moving on to item C, the resolution.
Point of order. I request that
be by paper ballot. Resolution 1, actually we need tellers first.
Point of order with the ballots, we need to be registered members of our community and in here, not that we have people that are not registered taxpayers voting. I don't know how you're going to pull that off. So you're supposed to sign up, but there's people in here that do not live in our district.
That was done,
Sorry, the presumption is that if you're going to vote, you're an elector of the district unless somebody challenges your residency in the district, in which case then we'll make a determination, the board will make a determination.
and in the past there's also been a cross count done between total votes and the registered people on the sheets.
That's what I'm asking.
Let's give me a couple minutes to do a count.
Just a reminder, if you came just a bit late and you are an electorate, that you should sign in over there. Certainly feel free to do that right now. Okay, we are ready to move forward with resolution 1. I need someone to make a motion stating resolution 1. We have a first to adopt resolution 1. We need a second. Second.
Can you say your name, please? Fire.
We can just do a hand vote on this. All in favor of resolution 1, say aye. Raise your hand, please. verification that is the same as the current rate. Could you please put our hands for aye on resolution 1, please? Okay, now, thank you for the ayes. Now we're looking for the nays on resolution 1. Ayes 61, nays 2. On to resolution 2, I'm looking for a motion to approve that.
I so move. I second it. Mark Pearson.
We have a first and a second. Kewaskum. All in favor of resolution 2 as you see it on the screen, raise your hand as aye. Thank you for the ayes. Now looking for the nays on resolution 2. Ayes 63, nays 2 on resolution 2. Moving on to resolution 3, need a motion to approve resolution 3.
I'll make that motion.
Mrs. Zimmerman, thank you. Looking for a second to approve resolution 3.
Second.
Lisa Herman. Second. All in favor, say aye by raising your hand, please. Any nays on resolution 3? resolution 4. Looking for a motion to approve resolution 4 as you see it on the screen.
Make a motion.
Bill Kesting making the motion. Need a second?
I second.
Second, Joyce Crowell. All in favor, raise your hand as aye. Any ayes, any nays to resolution 4? Zero. On to resolution 5. Looking for a motion to approve resolution 5 as you see it on the screen.
I'll make a motion.
Ronald Gingrich, first, looking for a second. We have first and second. Now this would be a paper ballot.
Everybody have their paper ballot?
Yes, no, you want on there? Yes or no?
Yes or no?
Yes. Oh, distributing.
Only the tellers be collected. Only the tellers be collected. Only the tellers be collected.
We're looking for an affirmative of yes or a decline of no on your ballot. Has everyone handed in their ballots? Anyone with ballots, hold them high, please. Let's. Okay, attention, please. On resolution 5, we have 52 yeas and 58 nays. So resolution 5 does not pass. Resolution 6. Looking for a motion to approve resolution 6, as you see it on the screen. Mr. Fadden, first, we need a second.
No second.
We'll allow Mrs. Gerhardt for a second. All in favor of resolution 6, say aye by raising your hand. (61 yea). Do we have any nays on resolution 6? Yeas at 61, nays at 26, resolution 6 passes. The 2015 annual meeting will be held August 24th, 2015 at 7 p.m. That concludes the resolution section of the meeting. We are now on to item D, which is entertain questions and comments allowed by law relating to the management of the district. Mr. Apple.
Is it out of line to request a recount on resolution 5?
You could
recount of the actual votes.
We did a double count. Each teller counted separately to get to those figures, and rather than retain those, we could most likely do that recount.
Thank you.
I will ask the tellers to do the recount while we're going through the questions. Thank you, Craig. Mrs. Harmon?
Is this the right time to ask my smart balance?
This is the time, yes.
I'm sorry. I taught myself for 31 years, and I've been in a district where we went through the standards and we threw out the old curriculum guides and tried to align everything properly. So I'm coming from both sides of this issue. I've researched it highly. I found 7 experts' testimonies online, listened to 2 or 3 hours worth of their stuff. And they basically said that the math and English standards are not acceptable, and they will sign off on it. But my question is about the Smart Balanced Assessment, which is supposed to be used in language arts and math. And it's from Common Core, because it says it will assess students' mastery of Common Core, and that kids can practice taking these tests this next year. I've looked and found 258 days of possible elementary school students taking these tests. I didn't think they could possibly stand that much of it, but anyway. Then I looked at the high school tests for the 2015 year, just for standard high schools. They're asking 5 safety questions, 11 violence-related questions, including bullying, date rape, suicide, 8 tobacco use questions, 2 electronic vapor products questions of things I've never heard of in my life, 6 drinking alcohol questions, 3 marijuana use questions, 10 other drug use questions, 9 sexual behavior questions, including are you straight, gay, bisexual, or not sure? 2 body weight questions, 9 questions about the foods you ate and drank during the last 7 days, 5 questions about your physical activity, and 5 questions on health-related topics. I cannot figure out why that has to be even placed as an option for a high school student to answer before they just take regular content class tests. I feel this is wrong. I think this is an invasion of privacy, and this is how the federal government gets the information from Smart Balance, which is given to the DPI. The DPI has signed off on this information and allows the federal government to pull whatever they want on our kids. Now, they may not have the name of each child, but nevertheless, they're still invading their privacy, I feel. And I can't imagine that this is in the best interest of our children, and this is the best practice that we can use. I mean, who cares how fat they are or how tall they are before they take a test? That's not teacher business. That's not even your business. Amen.
As with all due respect to the comments, and please feel free to make the comments or to ask questions, but these really need to be aligned to management of the district and what the management of the district can legally do. And Mr. Smazla talked about the fact that that's a decision that's made on the state or federal level.
No. Then why is Germantown turning down Common Core?
Mrs.
A couple of things. Number one, just a clarification, high school students will not take the Smarter Balance test, they'll be taking the ACT test. What's that? The ACT test does have their tests, and they did take that, and they did take a look at the Common Core, and you can find that correlation between the two on their website. The second thing is I think there might be some confusion between the Smarter Balance test and the youth risk assessment that was done. The questions that you're relating to about those kinds of questions, I have not seen on any of the Smarter Balance questions. And I've taken a look at multiple sample questions for Smarter Balance, so if you could maybe show me that on their Smarter Balance website, I'd love to take a look at that, but I personally have never seen any of those questions being asked by any of those assessments that they give for Smarter Balance.
I found it on your website.
That was that wasn't Smarter Balance.
Whatever, they have the same questions or assessment they were given our kids last year.
What was it called? That was the youth risk survey.
Okay, next question.
Hi, I have a question regarding something that someone over there had asked or commented on that I didn't realize it. Is it true that the charter school funding was based on adopting the Common Core standards for that charter school? If so, how do you see funding this charter school in the future once the federal funds have gone away? Number one, was it predicated on adopting Common Core? Because that's the first I heard of, just sitting here. Somebody,
Yes.
that lady.
Was in the application.
And is that true?
Well, with the Common Core, I'm not exactly sure when we did the grant, if it had to be aligned to Common Core. I will say that when we wrote the grant proposal, we want our students to reach the expectations and be prepared, college and career ready. And we did mention Common Core in there for ELA and math. We did say that those were the standards we were going to use.
Would you
And
have
I think
one
they're
of
better than the model academic standards that were prepared previously. And that's kind of, we were going down that road, yeah. We think.
Would you have gotten the funding had you not mentioned aligning with Common Core in your professional opinion? Do you think that helped you get the money, or do you think it wouldn't have mattered one way or another?
I don't know for sure, but I don't think it really would have mattered. I think it's just innovative ideas and ways of teaching kids and getting them to be successful in college and career ready.
And is this the funding mechanism for the charter school right now? Will this be the funding mechanism, the federal money coming in? Is that how you're going to fund the charter school?
We got a planning grant from the Wisconsin DPI. They might have got the money from federal funds. I think they did, but the DPI is who awarded us the grant. And this $200,000 that we have is strictly for planning, for getting ready. What innovative ideas are you going to try? How are you going to, we're getting a ton of professional development for our teachers on innovative ideas and best practices and the best way to educate kids, innovative things to try. And again, it's not, as Sean said earlier, it's not meant to make say one's better than the other. It's innovative, trying new ideas and ways to best reach kids and help them be successful.
I think if you read Andrew Steele's article on the charter school that was in the statesman, it was like, I want the accurate, but I thought it was 86 million that was got by the state of Wisconsin to distribute for funds for charter. And if I remember correctly, I looked at the application that was made out, that was presented to the board, they weren't aligning with Common Core standards.
Okay, Mrs. Allen.
I've been listening and reading, like I said, and there's a book called Training for Treason by Holly Swanson, who says if your new charter school funding is coming from the government, it will also be Common Core curriculum. And has all kinds of information to back it up, but I have a different question besides. I wanted to know, in Resolution 3, it says they're disposing of obsolete and unused furniture and equipment. Does equipment include library books? Because I'm finding in the research from these experts that librarians and high school teachers are being asked to get rid of many old books that are probably classics but have old dates. And librarians are encouraged to buy books only written in the last 3 years, rather than getting copies of classics and using them over and over and over again, as we've done for hundreds of years, to the, not the detriment of these communities, but to the excellence of them. I want to know if that's true or how much.
Mrs. Harmon, I will talk to the librarian tomorrow and find out how many books were disposed of in the last 2 years.
I don't know about how many. I'm really more concerned about the quality of the ones that were thrown out. Is it good literature, like I've read in all these places and heard on all of these shows?
I will have them contact you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Ms.
And we will report back if other people would like to know that.
Thank you.
And Grace, the answer to your question is you were spot on. Wisconsin charter schools received $8.17 million in grants. State superintendent announced grant awards to support 51 charter schools for 2014-15. Funding of the charter school awards is provided through a federal grant. Wisconsin won in 2009 worth $86 million.
Yes.
I just want to say the frustration isn't with teachers, and it's with the fact that about a year ago it was brought up to the board to discuss Common Core because we knew it was coming down the line. I appreciate that Mr. Smoss, Mr. Hanson, Mr. Pizzano time out to talk to me about it. There's many reasons why Common Core is controversial, but my concerns are that it was brought up and constantly ignored, so that's why many of us are angry. That they chose to move forward and implement this for yourselves. Many of you are not very educated on it. This decision will affect the children of this community. It is not something to be taken lightly. Our kids deserve the best education. They don't need a controversial education that can damage them not only educationally, but mentally. The testing required by Common Core for math only allows an answer to be given, to be figured out one way, even if they get the answer correct. If they do not use a formula, they get it marked wrong.
No.
Okay.
No. I just had a conversation in a meeting that I had with a student and a teacher, and I asked this teacher, a math teacher, if a kid gets a problem, this problem, in his own way, are you going to mark that wrong? Absolutely not, as long as he gets the correct answer.
Well, maybe not on the teacher's test, but when they go to the test required by the state, yep, it takes these kids a long time to do this. And I have no problem with our kids learning different ways to do math problems. I have no problem with that, because some kids can't memorize it. Some kids need the long formula to figure it out. I understand that that isn't the issue. The issue is that I didn't think Kewaskum needed Common Core. We had a lot of smart teachers here. I think we could have written our own standards. We have Mr. Rosada now, and I don't see why I was going to do that. But let me finish. Most average students that were used in this testing are now falling below average. What does that do to the psyche of our children? We all know that Wisconsin will most likely, well, depending upon the election in November, are looking to repeal the standards. So after spending millions of dollars on textbooks, technology, and training, we will probably need to start over in a couple of years, because no funding will be available from the government, from the federal government. I keep hearing that Kewaskum sets their standards higher than required. Why would we choose to implement standards that are lower? That makes no sense to me. One question that I heard is, what are we supposed to do? For now, why can't we just stick with the standards that we have? And improve the math and language arts where we're struggling, work on those ourselves. Because the government and others are just trying to make money off of Common Core. And they're collecting individual data of each student by selling that information to testing companies. My child's information is not for sale. Although I was told Kewaskum doesn't report data directly to the federal government, at this time they do report it to DPI, who probably records it to the federal government. And finally, a comment was made at the last school board meeting that teachers are trained professionals, and as parents, we don't need to know what our children are being taught or how. We are supposed to trust that they know best, even referring to not needing to know what a doctor gets, where they get their education. I have a right to a second opinion from my doctor, and I have a right to change my doctor. As a parent, it is my responsibility to know who, what, when, where, and the why. I fail as a parent if I don't. I then have the right as a parent to say no way for something that I don't think is good for my child. As a taxpayer and citizen, I have a right to say no. I don't want my tax dollars spent on a controversial program. I have a right, no, as a member of the Kewaskum School District, I have the right to change a school board that doesn't want to listen to their electors. Thank you.
Mr. Rosada, no questions?
Yeah, so just a couple of quick notes. You talked a little bit about different ways to get to an answer. The Common Core state standards are simply an expectation for what students should know or be able to do. So for example, the example that I gave before was for kindergarten, we should be able to count from 1 to 100. And there's obviously lots of different ways that we can use instruction and different resources that we can use to get students to that expectation. The Common Core does not necessarily dictate a particular way to get students there, whether it's counting on fingers or using manipulatives or using other forms of ways to instruct our students. That's our choice. That's what we've got control over, our curriculum and our instruction. In terms of reporting data, I can say Smart Balance specifically says on their website that they will not report any identifiable student data to the federal government at all. So, and there's a couple of different things on there that list off those the acts that don't allow them to be able to report that to the federal government, any kind of identifiable information about student data. So that's pretty clear cut.
Pastor Eric.
Yeah, I wanted to speak to the comments about the risk assessment that was being confused with that Smarter Balance assessment. As part of the clergy in the community that has been invited to be in conversation with the district for almost a decade, we very much value the information that's been gleaned from that risk assessment that the district has been taking. Initially, it was spread out over, I think, a number of grades that they were tracking to try and say, how are our kids doing? And how many supports are they getting from our community? What are the risk factors that we need to be looking at? And so when we talked as community members with the school district over that last decade to say, how do we improve values education? Now, how do we deal with issues around respect and bullying? What are some of the things that we really need to be looking at, not just talking about the educational standards of the district, which we also keep encouraging to be as excellent as they can, but also to say, how do we keep our kids, how do we keep them safe? How do we keep them growing up so that we're identifying those particular issues for our school district? As I understand it, at least as I remember over the last decade, this was a test that was administered out of the Twin Cities, or Minnesota, if I'm correct, right? We had experts that have come and spoken to us. They've spoken with various community leaders as well as law enforcement and other folks working with students to just try and say, what are the risks that our kids are engaged in that we need to be speaking to as a community? Because simply to say, hey, we don't want to know, or, you know, what's going on with my kid is my issue, and you as the school shouldn't know, really doesn't help us to work together as a community. So I'm concerned when we hear that particular assessment lumped in with Smarter Balance and other things, and to say, you know, that's a tool that, that I've been grateful to be in those conversations and to have us as a district trying to say, how can we, as a community, support our kids with as many what they call assets as we can, so that they grow up feeling loved, supported, cared for, that we're having conversations about the various behaviors that really are at least as risky as anything else that's going on. And so, you know, I think it's important for us to be attuned to how that data is being used, and that we've asked that be collected as a district. And as somebody voiced, those tests have always been ones that parents and students can opt out of, and that information is just coming back to our district. It's being compared, sure, nationwide, but it's just coming back to our district to say, how can we use that? So just to speak to that point. On the Common Core, I just sent one of our Kewaskum graduates off to Harvard, to graduate school at the end of last week, and I was pleased as could be. I would like to see that would be an opportunity for any kid that's growing up here and graduating out of this district. From the teachers that I keep speaking to and the administrators, what I guess I keep hearing is that the Common Core standards keep raising those standards for us beyond what we were using a few years ago, and that the curriculum, conversations I keep having are that our curriculum advisor keeps saying, hey, we need to push this even harder. We need to keep striving to be better than what those standards are. I would love to hear more conversation for us as a community about how it is that we take the standards that are offered and to apply that with curriculum that strives to exceed that. I think that's our goal for all of us. And I think that's what the school district's doing. I think it's what all the educators are doing. And I'm terribly concerned for us as a community that this conversation around Common Core that seems to be coming more out of a, I guess I know that we all have deep concern for our children, but I'm concerned that this sounds more like it's coming out of a political agenda to try and get us whooped up around things. No. The attacks against the standards.
It's about 50-50. It's not.
He's not done speaking, one person at a time, Mr. McGrady.
So what I guess what I want to make sure that we're doing is saying, you know, standards have been in place as Mr. Smalls was trying to say, standards have been in place for a very long time. And our opportunity as a school district is to take those standards and try and exceed them. Common Core, yes, received government funding to try and develop these standards across a broad base of states and governors that signed on to it. And this is my understanding. I've been doing research on it as well. What I can say is that I'm pleased that those standards are challenging our kids to continue to do better, not to do worse. So, thank you.
I don't think that anybody has a problem with the standards. I mean, standards are what they are. You're shooting for something. You're going for the goal, the standard, the flag that we stand up to. I don't think anybody has a problem with that. It's how do you get to that standard that most of us have a problem with. Common Core, it's the way you get to it that's the problem. We have some excellent teachers. There's not a whole lot of people that walk out of Kewaskum High School that can't read a diploma. I get it. It's why do we need to have that standard? Why can't we have a higher standard? Why can't we come up with our own standard? What's with all the data mining that comes into all that? There's so many people that are so excited that have no skin in the game at all. I have 5 kids. There's no way that you're teaching my kids Common Core in that way. The standard I don't have a problem with. If you want to test their kids and test the teachers and test them all, that's the right thing to do. We have to measure that our kids are reading better. I mean, I want my kids to be smarter than all the kids in West Bend. Of course I do. You know, we want to get higher and push further. There are better ways. We're asking the people that are just completely hell-bent against Common Core is we want you to push harder. We want you to have a better standard. This isn't good enough. And it's not ever going to be good enough. And we'll vote you all out. I mean, that's all there is to it.
Mr. Gerhardt.
How many, did anybody hear Mr. Bazada? Is that how you pronounce your name? He gave a pretty accurate, very accurate description of what we're doing. The standards are set here. He wants to go higher. That's to address one point. As he said earlier, we have the standard. The teachers can use whatever curriculum they want to get to that standard. Is that true?
No.
Yes or no? Yes, that's a yes. So that shoots that argument out of the water. I'm as conservative as anybody in this room, believe it or not. I don't like paying taxes any more than anybody in this room, believe it or not. I am totally with Mr. Kierkegaard. You know, you've turned this into this hideous political agenda. Let's get behind what we're trying to do. We all love our kids. That's not a, you know, let's get serious. Just settle down and let, you know, Jennifer and I have been in to talk to all our teachers that our kids have been part of, and had as teachers, and every one of them wants nothing but the best. They don't want to data mine my kid. You know, they want the best. I urge you to talk to the teachers. Talk to Mr. Bazetta, you know. Do it, you know, just do it, and you know, it's really not what you guys are seeing it as. It really isn't. And believe me, I'm really conservative. The end.
Grace?
Okay, one thing about, I do a lot of this Common Core standards I hear, but we're going to take it from there. You can't. It's a copyright act. You can only have 15% of the standards.
Would you address that?
Yeah, the Common Core, well, actually, any of the standards that Wisconsin puts out for the 21 different subject areas, whether it's art or business or English or math or social studies or science, is really a baseline that we really want all kids to be at. Certainly, we want to push our kids above that. So, to simply say, for example, again, to use my example of my kindergarten. You know, we want kids to be able to, by the end of kindergarten, count from 1 to 100. That's not to say that once a kid counts to 100, by the end of, by the middle of kindergarten, we're going to say, okay, we're not going to teach anything past 100. No, of course not. You know, we're going to keep pushing those students so that, okay, you got to 100, great, but not at the end of the year. We're going to keep working on getting you to count even higher than that. So yeah, it really is a baseline for what we want all students to be at by certain points of their grade levels. But it's certainly not a ceiling that we can say, okay, now we're going to stop it. We can certainly go above and beyond those as a baseline.
Mr. Mazzara, have any tech ed courses or AP courses been cut from the 13-14 to the 14-15 school year?
No, yeah, no, absolutely not.
Are they copyrighted or not?
The standards themselves?
What Grace was referring to?
Yes, just like any other.
So they are copyrighted?
Sure, but that's not.
Change them if they're copyrighted.
Well, but that's not, again, that's a baseline. That's not to say that we can't go above and beyond what the Common, what they don't want, what the Common Core don't want is they want people taking what they're doing and altering the text, saying that it's the Common Core. But that doesn't change the fact that, you know, we use those as an expectation for what kids can know and do. But again, it's a baseline. We can certainly teach above that. We just can't go in and change their text per se. What's that?
So you won't test it well.
Well, in our classroom assessments, we can clearly, yeah, our teachers can go ahead and test at different levels, yeah, in their classroom assessments.
Yes.
Grace isn't done.
I don't know. Sorry. Okay, continue, Grace.
All right. Smart balance assessments. And when you're talking about deadline, are you aware of the memorandums of understanding that the state of Wisconsin agreed to with Smart Balance? And then I will in turn aware of the memorandums of understanding Smart Balance has agreed to with the federal government. There's where we get the inslide of the data mining. The state of Wisconsin isn't giving the information to the federal government. Smart Balance will give the information through their memorandums of understanding. That's how it has been working. And going back to that, bringing up the standards and the copy of that, Smart Balance assessments are going to be assessing the students on how much of the Common Core they have learned. Smart Balance assessments is not going to have each test in all the states that have gone with Smart Balance change their tests that they're going to give the kids to reflect the higher standards that you're teaching them. Smart Balance tests are all going to be the same in all the states. So, yeah, you can give a test in the classroom, that's fine, but it's not going to measure the overall thing. So that's why, besides that, Common Core is so time-consuming. Teachers don't have the time necessarily to add to that 50% add to the Common Core.
Sure. So if you go on to the Smarter Grounds website and if you guys search for their student privacy page, it does list the information that Smarter Grounds is going to collect, which includes things like their race, it includes their no, it doesn't have anything in there about parents' names, no salary, it doesn't have email addresses, none of that stuff. It's mostly just demographic information, race, migrant status. It's got, you can take a look at the webpage, we probably can bring it up there. But specifically it says on there that it does not report any identifiable individual information to the federal government. The only thing that it reports to the federal government is large groups. of information. So it might say, based off of maybe groups of a race, it might say, white students scored this on this particular area, African American students scored this on this, but it does not report any kind of individual information about individual students to the federal government.
What about the information that's collected right here in the school district? Where does that information go on? Maybe a site detail on a student, on a child, incidents, reports. Where does that information stay in the school district, or is it sent to the DPIs?
Are you asking about individual psychological evaluations for
That's
students?
an example, a psych report, social services, health behavior, health problems, anything that's done with the student that is recorded of the student, whether it's by a student taking a test, or a teacher doing a report on the student, or a counselor making out reports. Where does that type of information stay? Does it stay in the school district?
If it's been done for an individual student to look at placement for special education, yes, it's kept in the district. If the evaluation is done only for the purpose of identifying students with disabilities, that doesn't get shared with anybody. In fact, ethics and boundaries prohibit us from even transferring any of that information to another school district. We can be fined for doing that. Medical and patient health care records can only be held by a custodian in the district, which is typically a school nurse. That school nurse can only pass on those custodial records to another school nurse in the district. They're the only ones that have rights to do that. When we do evaluation, we take that evaluation, we take the information out of it, and we look at what is it we need to educate students. What is it we need to look at educating that individual student? What is it about their disability that's prohibiting them from equally accessing that curriculum or that education as their non-disabled peers? Totally different.
What about the
And well, I have the mic. I just have to say, I'll introduce myself to you. I'm Jan Chapman, Director of Pupil Services for the district. I've been in the district now 2 months. I have almost 30 years under my belt in education. I know it's hard to believe because of my youthful appearance. I have worked in the Cedarburg School District. I live in the Cedarburg School District. I have worked in Mequon-Thiensville School District. I've worked in the Nicolay School District, and I most recently worked in the Germantown School District. Even in Germantown, where they said they voted down the Common Core, the meetings that I sat in as a district administrator, they are using the Common Core as a baseline, but then they are looking at adding onto that. Just as every other district has opted to not follow the Common Core, they've added on, but there are bases of the Common Core, because no matter what you do in life, there's got to be a standard. I hope my physicians and my doctors have standards that they have to adhere to in order to get their license. I would never think about going in and asking my doctor to limit his standards because the federal government paid something. He may have gotten a Pell Grant to go to school. Federal government paid for that. I would never ever question the standards my doctor has. I'm going to give you a little analogy. Everything we do in education, we should be evaluating. We need to evaluate, one, to see how are we doing. If I'm a coach of a basketball team, and my basketball team keeps losing, and they keep losing, I'm going to look at why are they losing? They're losing maybe because they can't make a free throw. I'm evaluating what that team is doing. I'm going to change it up at practice. I'm going to take that team, and at the end of practice, I'm going to have them constantly work on free throws. So when they get into that game, hopefully, those free throws will come into play and we'll win more games. If I'm teaching third graders in reading, and I don't care if it's Smarter Balance, or if it's WKCE, or years ago when they did Iowa Basics, we've been evaluating kids for years. That evaluation tells us how we're doing. How are we doing compared to others? We want to go farther. So if I look at my kids in my classroom, which you know what? Those demographics change every year. So I better be changing it up every year because I better be reacting to the kids that are sitting in front of me that year. So if I'm doing reading, and I noticed a couple kids in there, and I'm getting their results back, and I'm saying, you know what? They're struggling with phonemic awareness. I'm going to change it up for them. I'm going to take those kids, and I'm going to inundate them with phonics so that their reading levels go up. That's exactly what assessment does. It tells us where do we need to ramp it up, and where are we doing a good job. It's affirmation, and it is, you know what? We need to step up the game a little bit because this mark of kids aren't getting it. That's all evaluation is. And they've been doing it for years. I can tell you in Cedarburg's been implementing the Common Core. My last son just graduated from there. 3 children, 3 boys, all have graduated. First child, a non-traditional learner. Has a disability. All right? Each of my kids, that education was changed up. They didn't just teach them the Common Core. They individualized those education based on what was presented in front of them. Each of those students. Cedarburg just ranked, I don't know, 2nd or 3rd for ACT. The ACT scores have been going up every year because they have been ratcheting up their curriculum every year. They don't just teach the Common Core. They take, what do we have for our curriculum? What do our students need to be competitive in this global society? What are our students aren't going to stay in Cedarburg? I would hope they move on. I hope the students in Kewaskum. I want to give them every opportunity to be competitive and get in any school and go into any place of employment that they want in their life. So we're going to keep changing it up based on evaluation. That's all I have to say. I've never been short-winded, so I'll take it all there.
Mrs. Gall.
Staff in the school district, how do they feel about this Common Core issue and the standards and so forth? Number one, has it been, is it something being used now? And how overall does the staff feel about those standards? I mean, are we having teachers leave because we're going to implement this, or what is happening about that?
I can say that in 2010 is when Wisconsin adopted the Common Core State Standards as their English and math standards and replaced their old model academic standards from 1998, so they were about 12 years old when they did that. But I'll let maybe the principals talk a little bit about the staff reaction.
We have been phasing it in appropriately, going to workshops and things to make sure that we were staying current. Actually, it's quite the opposite. Staff is very excited. I was talking to a staff member just today who said, for once, there are multiple resources for me to choose from because we're all driving at the same goal. It doesn't matter if I'm teaching in Kewaskum, Wisconsin, or if I'm teaching, in White Bear Lake, Minnesota. It doesn't matter anymore because we can share what we have, and everybody's sharing. That's what educators do. And so those resources have multiplied immensely for what they can get their hands on. So there isn't apprehension amongst the staff. In fact, it has actually probably calmed nerves because of the specificity brought to the standard. As a former 4th grade teacher, it would say by the end of 4th grade, my kiddos need to be here. Well, if I'm teaching 2nd grade, I have to go, which one of those really fit for my 2nd graders? I'm not really sure. I'm going to take a guess here and really hope that my 3rd grade colleagues do their job so that by the time Julie gets them in 4th grade, she can finish it off and make sure they're ready. That's what the old Wisconsin model academic standards did for us. B is bring the specificity that say by the end of 1st grade, by the end of 2nd grade, they took the guesswork out of it, and on top of that, it has allowed collaboration. I have a teacher who collaborates with someone in South Dakota, someone who collaborates with someone in California, because they can connect, because they're all driving toward the same goal. His repertoire of his toolbox has grown like you wouldn't believe. And that's what we want for our kids. So that's actually what is done locally here in Kewaskum.
Mrs. Crum.
So in regard to that, I'm just going to make one comment. And what I've been hearing over the months and reading in the paper, the argument coming from the people against seems to be more about something that there isn't much control over because the state has already done things. If our school districts, staff who are teaching our children are in favor of this curriculum
more better, making it better, so that if, when our families move from Wisconsin to Colorado or California, you don't hear, oh my gosh, they're so far behind, or oh my gosh, they're so far ahead. There's going to be more evenness. If our staff is in favor of it, and parents are talking with the teachers so their kids get the best, what is the argument? I don't see. Arguing with the teachers. If we want good staff, we have to work with them.
Grace.
What is your interpretation of the leaking down the purple law by the U.S. Anybody?
I can't hear you.
Again, Grace, that's probably more of a state or federal issue. It's not, and with respect to what we're talking about here, it's directed at local management or local control.
Yes.
When will the board make a decision on Common Core, or have you already?
Common Core was implemented in 2010. And it's going fully implemented. Governor Walker, as he stated, is looking to make a change in January. This district, we just nominated Jesse Kramer, so I elected Jesse Kramer to set forward the 59. I expect some change will happen at that point in time. And that's why it's a state level. There's 424 districts in this state. And to address an issue someone brought up, we should have made this change in February, or pick a month. Our class schedules go out in February. We also had a change in our curriculum director position in July 1st. So had we started down that path of making changes, doing our own thing, I think we've been quite a quandary. And then there's also a finance issue that it would take a significant amount of money to start from scratch, and then we don't know what we're doing. We're not standards builders, we're curriculum builders. So what I think Ms. Gonzalez tried to express several times is Kewaskum is focusing on curriculum and making our kids as prepared as possible for college and career. So as far as making a decision, we're trying to put forth the best curriculum. It's not about Common Core standards, it's about curriculum. So that's when I hear what they're explaining to us, that's what I do from that. And I want my 3 kids to be fully prepared for college and career. One of them wants to be a physician, so we've kind of got a lot on the line at my house on what curriculum is being put forth at Kewaskum. Mr. Lester.
To tie into Mr. Fletcher's question, when did the board approve Common Core?
The board has a policy.
Okay, that's a policy. My question to you is, when did the board approve Common Core? Because I did not see any of our records where it was brought up for a vote to the board.
And
prove me wrong, Mr. Smazel, with when it was. Give me a date and give me a board meeting when the school board of Kewaskum approved Common Core.
so
To answer my question,
I'm going to
step
just
around.
I'm not going to step around.
Thank you.
Clark Pearson's right down here in 1998, the board at that time adopted whatever the state standards are. It didn't say specifically the Wisconsin, it says whatever the state standards are for the state of Wisconsin, the Kewaskum School District will follow. And all the board policies that we sat through with Neola over the last 5 days, last year, they all talk about using this assessments, the state assessments and the federal assessments through board policy, and that vote, I am telling you that that constitutes this board voting on it. Until it makes another vote to change it, that's what we go by.
That's what my statement is that it was approved more or less in 98. So the current board has never approved Common Core as is known is the date, correct? Back in 98, correct?
I don't know if I understand your question.
The question is,
okay, so if it's a comment, it's a comment. You're right.
So
Governor Walker changes this, what are we going to do going forward? Then we have to follow that standard.
That's
So that Common Core will be.
just like it's been for the last 130 years.
And, you know, I will point out that there's 21 different subjects that the state has for standards, and they revise those periodically throughout, you know, as we learn more. The state changes. For example, just most recently, there's been some changes to the career and technical education standards, and so, you know, yeah, we take a look at those changes and then we adapt to them, and that's kind of the procedure that we take is. As the state changes their expectations for what they expect out of schools, then we take a look at what those changes are and then we adapt to them. You know, I mean, in the end, whatever happens with the state when it comes to English, we're still going to be teaching kids how to read, how to write, how to speak and listen, how to research. With math, we're still going to be teaching kids how to count, how to add, how to subtract. You know, that kind of stuff doesn't change. You know, there might be a few things that we'll have to tweak here and there depending on what they ended up deciding, but in the end, the core of what math is and the core of what English is, I don't see that changing radically.
One more question, Mrs. Bendridge.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Looking for a second? Second. Discussion. If you have any further questions, you have the full administrative team on the website as well as the board to direct questions to any clarifications, any further discussion you want to have. So that way we leave this discussion open. Mr. Pizzata offers an open discussion with him via email, phone, or personal conference if that's how you want to get your questions out. He's got his cards up here if you're looking for that. Thank you for coming.